Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coding Bootcamp with Hired Labs. We're in week 5, almost our last week. So this is day 10 of 12. We're going to continue building our application and go through more of our CRUD operations. The first thing we're going to talk about along the way is something called namespacing, and we'll wait till we get to our hands-on piece to talk about that because it's really just kind of a setup so that our URLs don't conflict as a project gets larger, and it'll be a lot easier to talk about as we actually do it. We sent out the documentation earlier, so you may have had a chance to work through it. There's not a lot to it. It's really just kind of labeling some things. I really want to make sure we have time to talk about the why. And again, just a reminder of what CRUD stands for and what we're doing here. We're creating, reading, updating, and deleting all the things that we could do with a database, even though I know we talked about SQL because that's the one we're using. But this is broad, applies to all databases. We did our read operation. If you recall, we did a way to pull all the tasks that we have in our database out and look at them. So that is the read operation. Today, we're going to do create, give our users a way to press a button and create something. We'll save update for next week, and delete is very simple. We'll tack that on right at the end of next Tuesday because update and create are similar, but kind of build on each other. So we're going to start with create today. Any
Hello.
questions? Hey, Anthony, how you doing? Welcome.
Yeah, I emailed you that I was okay, and
Mhm.
I finished all the videos
Yeah.
up until now. And then I got I got the page where my site where it says home, about, and to do.
Hmm.
And my about was working, and then, but now after I finished the to do portion, and I guess we moved that code for the about where it pops up and everything.
Hmm.
Um, it's not working. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't pop up anymore.
Uh-oh. Okay.
I just
Well,
click on it and nothing happens. Yeah.
interesting.
And
All
then
right.
the to do, when I click on to do, is something supposed to pop up there? Show or
Yeah, it should take you to this read operation. That's what this should do. It should redirect you to the list of any tasks you have listed in the database.
oh, I just get a blank, nothing.
Okay. Okay. We'll step back through today when we add the operation because we're going to follow the same pattern that we've done several times already, where we write a view and then route our URLs and then do something with a template and then add some kind of navigation. So as we do those, we'll make sure that we have the right steps in place for your read as well. We'll debug along the way and we can catch maybe the mistake you made. Sound fair?
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions or anything about what we've done up to now? All right. Cool. So today, theory-wise, I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, I want to remind us that we're doing this back-end design and development section, and we're basically sitting in this place, kind of where the wrench and gear here is in the middle of this picture, and we're handling requests from end users that have a browser that are coming to our application, which is going to be it's a web application, right? And is sending that stuff into the server somewhere. We're getting information out of the server and sending a response back. We've already done this with our view that we did for the index, the view for the about page, and the view to read our tasks, right? We did all those things are the same. The conceptual thing I want to talk about today, we're not going to implement in this course, but I think it's worth highlighting and understanding because even in the documentation of the stuff that we're going to talk about, you're going to see reference to things like APIs. And we're going to talk about what those are, how they fit in. And usually when we talk to people, they'll start bringing this up. And it might be a little confusing as to what they're talking about. So first of all, does anybody know what API stands for? Some people are probably familiar with them already.
Application programming interface, something close.
Yes, interface. Cool. And would you know how to summarize that, like what it does and how it's different from a web app?
Oh, wow. So I would say it's more along the lines of the instructions or protocols that facilitate the software
Okay.
interactions
Okay. Okay.
versus the application being something that's a fully enveloped process that's already put together.
Okay.
So think of it like this: you have a contract, and then you have the limitations within those contracts.
Mhm.
That's how I would put it.
Okay. Okay. I think that's pretty good. That's close. I think that makes sense. Um, the way that I like to think about this is that APIs are a separate program, and it's really the same process that we're doing with taking a request from an end user in a browser and sending a response back. There's an exchange of data there. APIs are doing the same thing, so it's the same interaction. It's another program, not a human. That's the major difference. So APIs are some other program out there that are still using the same HTTP requests going back and forth. So we're handling HTTP requests, And APIs can also use those. So that's what you're going to see in the context of web applications and web development is APIs are a way to use other programs in your program or make your program's data available to other programs. So you see the arrows here pointing back between the API. There's not labeled on request and response, right? So the end user and a human in a web app context sends the request and we send the response back. We're not sending requests the other way. Whereas APIs could be that. So we can either write them as developers in our program as a request to another program, like say Google, and say we want to use their maps. Instead of writing our own maps, we send a request to Google Maps. They do all the map stuff that Google does, and they send us back a response, and we use the response data in our program. That's what APIs are really good for and what they do. So we'll talk a little bit more about it, but generally that's what they are. The thing that I really want to highlight
So
about oh, sorry, go ahead. Question?
is that kind of like where that GIF site was? Would that be considered kind of the same thing?
Not quite. That's uh, almost, almost. This is a little bit more complex. So think of this more like, say, if we take it outside of, or we use the analogy that we've been using already with building a physical space, of building a building, right? So what we've done so far is we've set up some space on the internet and we put our framework Django in there, and think of that as the actual framework of a building, the frames of it. And now our app is sort of like the doors and paths and elevators and stairs. An API would be like the stuff that we get shipped from another country that is tools that we're going to use in our garage to make something, or it's like the parts we're going to use to build a car, or like the ingredients we're going to use to make a cake or something like that. That's what APIs are. So something that's fully built in like another factory, and that we get those parts and we use one piece of that. In our case, it's data that we're using. Does that make some sense?
Could you also use like an analogy of say like a API is like a concierge?
Okay, we'll take it all the way in. How would that be like a concierge? Sure.
I mean, you reach out, hey, I want this.
Yeah.
They say, okay, yeah, we'll get it to you. Hold on.
Yeah.
And then they give it to you. Is that how?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and that's going to touch on when we talk about one of the kind of architectural choices. That would be a good way to think about it too. Yeah, absolutely, that's a really good analogy. Sure, sure. So one of the things that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about APIs and make sure we got that totally, at least for our needs, understood. One thing I want to highlight about HTTP that we're going to get hands-on with today, as we do our create operation, is there's some slightly different terminology that you may have run into already with our read operations, where we had we went and got something from the server and it came back to us. You may have seen it in your debugging efforts. I know we saw it in class, but I didn't highlight it because I'm going to save it for now. So today, when we use we do our create operation in HTTP, it's called a post method. So the method of the request, the term method is going to be used, and request we've already talked about. The method of the request is going to be post to create something. We've already done get, but we'd have to be explicit. We will be explicit with post today. We're still writing. We're not writing in HTTP directly. We're still writing in Python. And Django is helping us interface with HTTP. But there's one bit of logic that's going to revolve around this word post. So I want to make sure we know what it is that we're talking about. There are equivalents to the other operations. There's a put, and there's also technically a patch, but we're not going to worry about that. And that's kind of for updating records, which again, we'll get to next week on our end. But we don't have to be explicit with those. And then delete's just delete. And that's, again, we don't need to be explicit with those. We are going to be dealing with post request methods, though. And that'll become, again, really clear once we get our hands on it, which we'll do shortly. So APIs, the thing that I want to be really good and clear about, right? So we talked about kind of what they are in analogies of shipping things, or maybe a concierge, right? So there are different ways that can be done. And what I really want to highlight here is a couple of things. So this is going to be really good for anybody who is feeling that this class is kind of right on pace with their skill level and wants to do the next step and kind of expand their design and get some more interesting things in there in a simple way. But this is also for people who are pure beginners, and this is a little bit of a struggle even to get where we are. As you read documentation, you'll see these terms, and I don't want you to get sidetracked by them. I want to show you kind of what's relevant in it and not to be scared off by it. And there's a lot of jargon that it's a slippery slope. We start looking up APIs and trying to understand parts about it. They start using other terms that, you'll end up looking up forever. It's kind of a waste. So we'll try to boil this down to something relevant that if you're feeling like you want to plug it in, we'll talk about places to do it. But if this is something that you want to kind of log for later, like we did with the big O notation in the second week, this is something that you can get by without really using APIs. But so there are two main approaches you may run into. REST is by far the most used one right now in web applications. And there's also something called SOAP. And I'm not even going to break these out because it's not that helpful to understand what they stand for. But I do want to highlight the differences in some kind of ways. So in REST, or sometimes you'll see RESTful, like full in lowercase letters, it's protocol agnostic, meaning that it can work on HTTP as well as other things. It's very frequently used with HTTP. But the format of data that it uses is also, it doesn't matter. So as long as the sending and receiving system uses the same format of data, it can use a number of things, most specifically JSON. Now, we mentioned this once briefly when we talked about hash tables and hash maps as a data type. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's just what we know in Python as a dictionary. So it's a set of key value pairs in curly brackets. And this is a way that systems that can be written in C or Python or anything will exchange data with each other, and it's the kind of thing that you can expect to get from a RESTful API. It can also use XML, which we're not going to do it all in this class, but it looks just like HTML in a lot of ways. So the HTML that we do use, if you know enough of this to recognize it, you can read XML and know what's going on. So as compared to another one you may see places called SOAP, which is similarly protocol agnostic. This is more kind of used in things like interacting with emails is the word I was looking for, that kind of stuff. But one of the reasons it's not as popular is that it's very strict in its data format. It does not allow JSON, which everybody uses, and it requires you to use XML. So this is one of the main choices you're going to see. So again, when you go and read documentation, you're looking for things, you may say, hey, we have a RESTful API. Just know that that means JSON. Know that that means it's something that you can read. You could read JSON because you can read a dictionary. It's the same thing. And know that you can use these things from them. Does this make sense? Any questions about this? So I'm going to show a quick example of how easy these things are to use and grab, and places, and like a suggestion of where you could drop them into your project even as you have it now. But let's say, for example, you want to use a Google Map API. I'm not going to, I'm trying to pitch Google, and I don't work at Google or anything like that. But if you just look up, say, Google Maps API Python, you can eventually get to this little description of things. And in all of the API documentation, you should find some sort of JSON response. And this will show you exactly what is given back from the API. And as you can see, it's a familiar key value pair. So these are all just the keys that are listed. It says geocode waypoints. If you scroll down, it gives you a lat long, and it can give you, the address as a full thing. And it can give you all this information, like tons and tons of information, right? And it tells you how to use this. And again, it's using HTTP. So really all you do is send something to this once you give them your key, because these things are typically free up to a certain point. Like you have X number of requests you could do for free, and then they start charging you, unless it's something like ChatGPT, where it charges you by the size of the request, like how many words are basically in the thing. But all APIs work roughly this way. You get some sort of key from the company, Google, OpenAI, whatever it may be that you want to use. You send the request with the key to this thing, and it'll give you back this JSON object. And these are the things you can get out of it. And we already know how to reference these things from this class, right? We just reference it by the key. We get the value out of it. So is this making sense? Kind of what APIs do for us and why we might use them? Any questions about this? Do we see where this could go? Okay. So another quick example, this just shows sort of the things that might be returned or that will be returned from it. But you can also find in the documentation the specifics on how to use it. Now we're going to go into, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, GitHub next week at the end when we talk about version control systems. But this is a page where you can find all kinds of information. And if you scroll past a lot of the things that are on here, it's good to read all of this. But what I'm looking for is two things: installation and usage, because I want to highlight these. To install and use this Google Maps API, this is the code. It's all code that you all know already. There's a pip installation, so you just do that in your environment. And then once you have it, usage is you write this Python script. So we have some import statements at the top. Then we have an instantiation of a class, which we've done already. And then there's some methods that they call to do things like look up an address or look up information based on the coordinates that you have, or get directions to a place. All the things that Google Maps does well. Instead of writing those Google Maps functions yourself, you just put this piece of code in like your scripts in your project structure, just like we do with the JavaScript, and run this script the way we ran the JavaScript to link it back in, put it into like some kind of button or something at your front end. Everybody tracking on this? Is this making sense? Any questions about this generally? No?
No questions for me. I'm just following along.
Great. Great. All right, cool. Because, yeah, we're going to get hands-on here and build our own CRUD operation of create. And the reason I bring up APIs now is because it's really the same sort of thing that we're going to do today. We're going to take some kind of user input, and we're going to send off the things in sort of two different places. We'll send the data from the request into our database, and we'll send the user to another spot. And that mechanics is really the same sort of thing that you're going to be doing if you use an API of any kind. All right, so if no questions, then we can go over to Python Anywhere and get hands-on with this stuff. Let's wrap this thing up. Let's go start building. All right, so we are in Python Anywhere, and we go to a console and start where we normally start. See if I am out of where I need to be. I've got unicorns, cupcakes, and awesomeness. Okay, so here we are. So we're in the starting directory. Do our first step. As always, we're going to start our virtual environment. For me, that's named BMs or VN, whatever name you gave it. Then bin, then activate. And then change directory into the top level my site directory, where we need to be for today. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do, we talk about namespace. Namespacing is a way to set up our URL patterns so that when we add more things to it, we don't have to worry about using unique URLs each time. Things like index could be used over and over again, or you don't have to be that conscious about which words you're using to label your URLs, because you can wrap the URLs you're using into what's called this namespace and name the application that we have. So it's a simple process. We're going to step through that. Everybody kind of understand what I'm talking about when I say the purpose of what we're about to do? Any questions while we go there? All right, sounding good? Good. So we're going to go into our application level URLs, because this is the namespace we're going to define as our application. This is typically where it's done, and we're setting aside a space where the variable names and function calls and all that kind of stuff is contained in here. That's sort of what namespace generally means in programming terms. And so what we're going to do is right above our URL patterns, I'm just going to give it a little bit of space and use app_name, all lowercase. And I'm going to set it to do, all lowercase. And that's, the app_name is what is expected in Django. And we're going to set it with the equal sign declarative thing to make it and the string to do, all lowercase. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is, now that we've done this, and we kind of take a step back logically and think, all right, now we have our project level stuff and we have our application level stuff. And we're going to add more views to our application level, but this about and index, these are actually project level things. So let's move those up to our project level URLs. And so then they can stay where they are. And then all of our application specific things about viewing the tasks and that kind of stuff, we can separate those out the way that they should be. So we're going to move these up to the project level. I'm going to hit Control X to take those top two out. So my about and my root one are gone. Now I just have my to do views.viewTasks and the view and that line for that path in my URL patterns. So with that copied to my clipboard, I'm going to go up. Oh no, I'm going to save this first, because that would be a bad move to move away before saving. So I'm going to go up to the top level, my site, and then back into the second my site URL. So I'm at the project level URLs now. So my site urls.py. And I'm going to add right above my include statement and my admin stuff. I'm just going to paste those two paths that I took out of from below. So now I have these two things in here. So now this URL setup, this URL patterns, is just our project level stuff. And then we include in one line all of our application level things. So we separated those out. And we're going to do one more thing here. And this is, Kind of one of the reasons that we do it this way. A lot of the things that we do today and throughout is our design decisions. We didn't have to do it this way. We could have used one URL file and done all the URLs just in one big thing. Some of these are best practices. Some of these are to show good ways to use some of the tools that are available to you and have an example for it, right? So this is also it's a best practice to do it the way we just did it and set it up here. We have project level versus application level. But then this import statement is also a different way of importing things that could be used throughout Python and is very commonly used if you're doing things like data science and you're using a thing called pandas, or if you're doing some visualization things. It's very common to follow this pattern. We're going to import something and save it directly into a variable that we give it. So to do that, we're going to do from, and then the place that we import from, just like we have in the past. So to do, in our case, so we're going to be importing our views into here to use. I'm going to say import views like we had before. So up to here it looks the same. But if we just import views, this isn't going to help us with the problem that we are trying to solve with namespacing our application, which is what we're doing. This will just collide with new applications because every Django application starts with a views.py and you write all of the things that it does in views. So everything's going to have views. So this is the piece where we need to give it now a variable name to store these views from this application. So what we're going to do is say as, and so this is how you do this generally in Python, and then any variable name you want. So in our case, we're going to do to do underscore views to be specific on what sort of views we're importing. All right, so there's a variable name right here, this to do underscore views. We're importing our to do, our views from to do as to do views. Now that we've changed that name, we can't use views down here on our path anymore because that doesn't exist in this file, in this space. So what we have to do is change all those to the to do underscore views. Oh, in the places where they are, because those views are still defined in that to do thing. All right. So now that we have that, we've added our two other paths to this, and we've added this little prepended piece to it to make sure that we have it included properly. We could save this, and then we need to make a small adjustment to our navigation in the base.html in how we now reference things that are in our namespace for our application versus our project level. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to my site, templates, so the top level templates, we're going to go to the base.html where our navigation is. So our top navigation bar that's on every page, that's going to have our way to get to the index, the about, and our view tasks. And so what we've done is we have namespaced this application, the to-do application, away from the project level things. So now we need to reflect that in this URL reference with what amounts to a key value pair, but just in the same string. So we do the name of the app, in our case to do, and then colon, then the name of the view that we're looking for. And that's it. That is the last step to name spacing. So now that we've done this, every time we reference one of the views that we write, we're going to follow this pattern here because it's part of this application. And then throughout our application, throughout our code, it'll be clear which application we're referencing and which view we're referencing. So we're never going to have conflict between this name if we want to use it again someplace, if we want to use index. It won't collide with the existing ones. It won't collide with ones in another application, and we're free from future collisions with URLs.
Is the view tasks supposed to be underscored or dashed?
Dashed.
Okay. I don't know why I have it underscored here.
Most importantly, it needs to match what you have in your to-do urls.py. The keyword argument for name is what this is referencing right here, so that needs to match that. And in our case, again, I follow this convention of putting a dash there because it's the same way that we're going to label the templates. All right, any questions about this? We're good on this? We're going to reload this on the server side. Then I forgot to open my web tab, so I'll do that while it refreshes. We'll go here. All right, so it didn't break yet, which is encouraging. So we have our navigation bar now that should, since it was just a refactoring and we didn't change any of the functionality, this should just take us back to the same place that we had it before. And we're able to.
Mine broke.
Still broke? Okay.
Maybe it was still refreshing. Let me try again.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, it wasn't broke before, but
Oh, it wasn't. No, you got to work
it
up to
just
that
wasn't,
point.
it
Okay.
just wasn't responding properly. Like I told you earlier,
Yeah.
but now when I hit refresh
Yeah.
after doing what we just did, now it broke. But let me complete let me try again. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Yeah, it's broke now. It's still broken.
Okay.
It's
So,
saying, yeah, my to do is highlighting that what we just changed the URL
uh-huh.
to
You want me,
do colon view task.
you want me to have a look?
Yeah, right there. Just whatever
Okay.
we just did
Sure.
on my
Let's have a look. So the base.html, right?
base. Yeah.
Templates, base.html. View tasks. Yeah, that looks good. Let's see.
Are you able to run my code on your site? Are you able to do that?
I can go to your site and I can see your error
Oh, okay.
logs.
Yeah.
Okay, so right here. So this is useful. All right, so we have to do is not a registered namespace.
Hmm.
So
Didn't we
that
just do that?
means we did, but you must have skipped part of the steps. So you did this part right where you wrote this part, but that means that there was a mistake some other place. So where did we define this namespace? Where's the first step that we did basically?
Yeah.
Because this is the
That
last
was.
step, and you got that.
I don't remember where. I got so
Okay.
many
URL,
tabs.
Was that Nathan?
URLs,
Yes. Which
no,
URLs?
the upper my site
My
URL.
site, my site? No,
No?
no, no. The first change we made was the applicate the place where we are defining our namespace. So right here is
Oh,
is where you missed it. So this right
Really?
here, yeah, Anthony, check this out. So hold on, I'll go back to it in mine. So we're back in mine. This is my stuff, and to show you that this is exactly how yours looked, it looks fine. So the error you're getting that says like, hey, and then it highlighted it here. This is where it broke. That doesn't mean that's where the error is. So you
Mm-hmm.
wrote this piece right. The error is in to do urls.py.
I'm
You're
there
missing
now.
this piece right here. The app name, the app underscore name
Oh,
is to do. And that's what this is what telling you right here where it says to do is not a
okay.
registered namespace.
So, all right. What should it be at? Okay. At
App underscore
underscore
name.
name equals
Yep.
to do.
Yep. And that should solve that problem once you reload it because it looked like it was formed properly on that top part. Um, but while I'm here, I can look at your other ones. All right, anybody else stuck? Wait, I'm looking at mine. Everyone else able to get back to where we were before after namespacing your applications?
I messed mine up somewhere else though, I think.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Extra points, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, unique ways of breaking things are always valuable.
Well, I was looking at this my site templates base,
Mm-hmm.
and so two things were going on. One was like my page, when I hit the about button, it would give me
Yeah.
the pop-up that says that's basically to clear a task. So that shouldn't happen. It didn't just take me to the about page. So I was
Uh,
looking at this my sites templates base, and I
yeah.
saw that my about string, the nav class button,
Mm-hmm.
was different. So I just updated it to what?
That's for a second. Sorry. Audio. I lost audio.
Oh, to what
Yeah.
we had, and
Yeah.
now that broke my page. So I think previously I had class button href, and after the button within that parentheses, I had some other stuff. So yeah, see how you've got class, the about line has class button href, but I had a class, and then my button had some other stuff from previous class. I cut that out, and now my stuff's all broke. So
Yeah, I don't see a problem. I'm looking at your file actually, so yours looks fine.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I see that just something went wrong. So let's see. I'm gonna look at your error logs real quick.
It would display the page part of me cutting out um that last little bit of code I cut out. but the about was wrong when it displayed. It would make me have a pop-up.
Okay, did you start writing? Okay, let's check out your views. Did you start doing today's documentation and get stuck?
Yeah, I was ahead.
That might be the problem. Let's have a look, because if that's the
Okay,
case, it
okay.
looks like that might be the case, but I'm just going to double check. And if it is, then we'll hit pause and we'll catch up to that. We'll catch up to where you are. Yeah,
That's
it looks
probably
like
what it is. Sorry,
that's what it is. Yeah,
I
you're
should
right
have
here.
mentioned that. Yeah,
Yeah, you're a bit ahead. That's okay. I think
yeah.
this is going to just be you misspelled form.
What? Never.
Yeah. Yeah, right there. You metastasize, man. It's metat. You switch the R and the O. Man, I do this all the time. You wrote from. Plus, we
Right.
write from like a million times in Python. And then today
Yeah,
we're writing form like 7 times all of a sudden. So easy mistake to make, man. But yeah, that's probably your problem right there.
I could use views. All right, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. No problem. All right. So let's get everybody else to that point. Let's see. I'm back on mine. That's my console. Okay. Anybody else stuck? I want to hop into it real quick. Who isn't ahead? I should have caveated that. That's my fault. Good catch, Greg. Keep me on my toes.
Are you, what are we doing here? Are we trying to get people?
Yeah, I was checking to see if anybody else was stuck or had questions before we moved on. So all we've done is namespaced our URLs, the place
Okay.
that we helped you to make sure we were there, help Greg with something.
Okay.
All right, nothing else. We're good. Awesome. Let's move forward with adding our new operation. So before we start just writing code and whipping around doing our thing, let's think about what we need to do kind of from a design standpoint, right? So we're going to need to have a way for the user to get information into our database. And that's typically done with a form. And even looking here on Python Anywhere, this is just a form. This right here, it may actually even say that it's a form if we inspect this element. Let's have a look. Not sure. But yeah, here it is. It's a form. So right here, form, action, method, post. So we're going to do this same thing right here. We're going to make a form like this one where users could put stuff in and do something with it. And we'll use the same HTML form. We're going to write our own, use a lot of the same kind of stuff that these guys have here. And to do that, we're going to have to start by defining a form for Python or for Django to use. It's going to be written in Python, but for Django to use to interact with our database. So we're going to first define that interaction. And we could do this in a number of places and ways. The way we're going to do it is in a separate forms file, right? It's not required to do it that way, but it is handy for, again, just like we've done with adding our scripts to other files. If you add anything else to this program, you're going to want to put it in a new file. So we'll just do that right away. So you can do this in the console if you like, but we'll do it right here in the GUI just to keep it simple. And we're going to make a forms.py file in our my site to do directory. So we go to my site to do. We should be alongside of our views and our models.py and all those sorts of things. We are going to make a forms.py. Make sure you spell that right. FRMS. Plural. Today is a day where plural and singular might mess a lot of people up. So there are things we're going to be calling plural, things we will call singular. But this is forms.py because there may be more forms. We will only write one. So first thing we're going to do is going to import some stuff from Django. So I'm going to say from Django, we're going to import forms. That's going to give us a whole bunch of built-in stuff that we can do with the set of forms that Django has already defined. Now, since we're going to be using what's called a model form, we're going to import a model of ours to use. And a model is the one that we've made already from .models import task. And if you recall, task is a model that we defined that is a definition of a database table written as a Python class. All right, so now we have these things in there, and we're going to make our form as a class as well. So we're going to do class, and this is capitalized like all Django classes, or Python classes rather, sorry, not Django classes, Python classes. But it's typically call it like what kind of form it is, and then form. So task form in our case. And just like we do with models, we're going to inherit some parent form stuff. So from the see, I did form again. Forms dot model form, capital. So capital model, capital form. Okay, yeah, no worries, Kevin. Do what you gotta do, man. And then we're going to close it off with a colon to tell it that we expect another code, the beginning of a code block that we're going to indent. So here's our form definition, and we're going to inherit from the model form class that's defined up here in the. Whoop! See, I almost made a mistake. Forms.modelForm. Would have made that mistake. Imported from forms. So we got forms.modelForm. And let's go in here. Now, the first thing we have to do, somewhat confusingly, but it's, there's a lot of redundancy in here. We're going to define another class inside of this. And this class is going to be called meta. And this is how our model class is going to interact with our database. So when we think about, again, how this is going to work, our HTML page is going to load up, and this will be instantiated as a task form. And so this class is a way for our instance of it to go to the database and grab what we need so that each time we make a form, it's grabbing the right stuff from the database. That's what this meta class is doing on the inside of our class. So we have to tell it two things minimum. There's a lot that could be done here, but we're going to keep it really simple and just put which model we want to grab. So model as an attribute. So model is, and then task. It's the name of the model. And then we want to tell it which fields we want to grab out of that model, which ones we're going to use as a list of strings. And so fields are going to be the attribute names that we gave to our model. So it's the column names that we want to include in our form. In our case, it's going to be everything because we have no reason not to include something in our form. But you may have stuff sometimes like a timestamp or something like that that you don't want to present to end users and have them manipulate or change or do anything with that you don't include in your form. So this would be a place where you could leave it out. So we're going to do title, the due date, which was just due, and then status, all is strings, all lowercase. They have to match the attribute names that we used in our models.py when we define the class, or when we defined the model in our Python class. All right, so there's our form defined. Now again, this could have been done directly in our, like, say, models or in the views. Actually, it would have been a logical place to use because we're going to go and use in our views when we write our view. But that would have gotten large and unruly if you start doing several forms, which you typically do. You typically have a couple of different forms that you're going to use. All right, everyone good on this? I'm going to save this. We're going to move on to our views. So now we're going to follow outside of this. We've made this form. It's going to be accessible to us that we could do some things with. We're going to follow the same pattern we followed in the past. We do our CRUD operations, which are, what are the steps? Where's the first thing we do? What do we write? We write a anybody? It's right here. Views. So we write a view. Then we map a URL. Then we do something with a template. We add navigation, right? So let's go write our view. So my site to do views.py, we are going to add our create view. But first, we're going to have to import a few more things up here at the top. Some things that we're going to use along the way. I'm going to get some space for us because here's our import of our model that we are going to use, but I'm going to get some other things in here. So right underneath our first import of render, and this was what we've used to send back our templates when we just have a template to send back and we're not doing anything else. Now, what we did, and I mentioned this a little bit already, so let's think through the scenario. We get a request from a user that is going to have something we want to send to our database, but we don't want to send our users to the database too. They don't go to, there's nothing there for them to see, right? So we want the data to go to the database and we want to redirect our users to some other place. So we're going to use not just render, we're going to use redirect is what it's called. So we do comma and import this from the same place, Django.shortcuts. So we're just going to add this call after render. So comma redirect. And then since we're using namespaced applications like we should, we're going to import another tool from the URLs package. So from Django.urls, we're going to import reverse. And this is going to allow us to look up the name of the thing and then the app that its namespace is involved in. That's how we're going to do our redirects. We're going to first redirect them, and then we're going to tell it to look up which thing to redirect using a reverse style of lookup. All right, so if I hit save on this, just in case anybody is save happy, which you should be, and it's a good habit, you'll get these little error things over here that says, oh my God, it's just telling you that you haven't used these. This is helpful in text editors to say, hey, you imported this, but you're not using it. It's just a warning. It's not going to break anything, but it is helpful to say, oh, hey, I haven't used that yet. All right, so the other thing we need to import is that task form that we made. So similar to the model import that we did here, we just have to import it from our own directory. So so the same directory we're in, dot forms. So from dot forms, import task form. And again, this is why it's helpful to follow conventions of like the name of the form is task and then is the thing, the model we're using, then form. That way I don't have to go look it up, check it out. I'm not like, naming it something creative each time and getting really crazy with the names. It makes it a lot faster to use something that's somewhat predictable and reusable without having to flip back. So those are all the things we need to import. Now we can write ourselves another view. So right here underneath our view tasks view, I'm going to give myself a little bit of space so I'm not writing right at the bottom of the page, but just go down one line. And I'm going to define, good old friend def, a create underscore task view. Task singular. So there, you may write a view at some point that creates multiple tasks with one function. We're writing one that creates one task and one task only. So again, singulars and plural. Today is one of the days that might be a problem for people. So this will, like our other views, handle a request. Just like all HTTP stuff, we start by a request from the user coming out of a browser, and then we're going to do some stuff. Now, unlike we've done in the past, we're going to check the method of this request. So in a if statement, we're going to see if the request dot method, so it's referenced in the way that all things in Python really are referenced. Say request dot method, say if it is equal to, and then we do all caps string post, P-O-S-T. So this is the HTTP post method that we were talking about. This is why it's important to kind of understand what this post means. It's just referring to an HTTP request that is trying to create a record on a database. That's what a post method is. So the first step that we want to do is to see if our request here, if the method for that request is post. And this dot notation on grabbing the method that we do here, this is the same way you can get all kinds of stuff out of the request. The user, the time, there's all kinds of stuff you can get out of requests like this. But we're just checking the method for this one. Okay, so let's write in this code block. We've now indented twice. So our first indentation for our definition code block, our second indentation for the inner if. So we're 2 indents over. Let's handle the situation where it is a post method. That means somebody has submitted the form and there is data in there to set into our database. So that means that we want to give them a form, like start with a form. So we need an instance of our form. So let's do form as a variable name and set it to an instance of our task form. So we instantiate our task form with open and close brackets. But we're going to send the request dot post, no strings, just request dot capital all caps post. And we're going to send that in our instantiation of the class. And what that's going to do is it's going to bind that information, that data from the post information, into our class, our task form. So the task form, when it instantiates, is going to go to our database. It's going to grab the fields that it needs out of that database like we told it to. And then it's going to take the information from the post, or the post information from the request, and stick them together for us into this. I pointed my screen like you can see what I'm pointing at. I could also try highlighting with the cursor. The form variable is what we stored this in. I can also zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. All right, so now we have to save this information somehow to our database and commit it there. But there's one intermediary step that we need to do for security to make sure that the stuff is valid information and not something that's junk and we don't want or useless data. So we're going to do another if statement. So on the same indentation as our form block, right? We're going to do another if statement. So we're inside the outer if. I'm 2 indentations in and I start if and I do form dot is underscore valid. There's a built-in method to all forms. This is, again, when we imported the Django forms, this is one of the things that we imported, was this method that will check to see if the form information is valid or not, which is awesome. That means we don't have to write that logic ourselves. All we have to do is tell this thing what to do in the case that it is valid, right? So what we want to do in our case is we just want to save it. So we do form.save. Oh, not save, open and close parentheses. And that is it. So that is the case that we're going to do for if our method is a post, meaning that it has data that they want to save, We're going to give them a form and take that data and bind it to the form. We're going to check to see if that form data is valid, and we're going to save that form.
What would be an invalid form?
Invalid data. So, this is kind of one of those security things. Like somebody might put malicious code into a form on the internet. So imagine where this form is going to be. It's going to be exposed to some place on the internet where people can write things into it. So that might be one of the things that's invalid. Like it could,
And
some known malicious things that like a SQL injection. If you look up a SQL injection as an attack, it can like check for that sort of stuff that's known and common so that you don't have to code for it is really what this is doing. It is valid, say strings and stuff like that. There are a couple of places where it's going to check validity, and this is one of them. But to your question, if you really want to know exactly what it checks, because Django is an open source project and because this is just files and directories, you can go look it up and read exactly what it does, and it's going to be written in Python. That answer your question?
yep.
Cool. So these pieces here, this is really bare minimums of how to just get the information that was sent in the request, bound to a form, see if it's good, and save it. You could do a lot more with this logic now that you have this built. You could put in any number of things. This is where you might stick an API call to get information, do something with it, right? So like the post information in your form might have somebody's address, or it might have their device location or something like that, right? So you could take it and use those map things that we looked at. This would be the place you would plug those sorts of calls in. All right, so now we've committed it, we've saved it, and we're good. Well, no, we're not good. We need to do something with it. So we've saved the form. That means the data is done. But we said we have two things, right? We got the data and we got the user. So now we got to do something with the user. So we're going to put our return statement in here so that our function stops and doesn't go any further once we've met the criteria of both of these logical control statements. And we're going to use that redirect that we were talking about to redirect our users back to the place that we want them to go. So if we, again, think logically about the design that we have here, when users click on a button to add a new task, it'll take them to our form. They'll fill out the information that they want to do. They'll hit a submit button of some sort, and then it'll run this save logic and redirect them back to our main view of view tasks view. And that new task that they just added should be there, because then it's just going to call this view from up here, which will grab all the tasks out of the database, and we just made a new task in the database. So we're going to redirect. We'll do reverse to do our namespaced app URL name. So inside of our open parentheses for redirect, we hit reverse and then another open parentheses. And then we do to do view dash tasks as a string, and then close off both parentheses. So now we have our first case handled. If somebody goes to this is when someone goes to our site and fills out the form, hits submit, sends the information, we commit it to our database on this line after checking that it's good, and then we redirect the users back to that home page. Cool. So we got to do a couple other things because we have to handle the other condition, not for if it's not valid, because that's handled. We don't have to do anything for that. If it's not valid, we say nothing. We're good. It'll just move on. 2, our else condition for this part. So we're on the same indentation. We're one indentation in, but we're underneath our return statement. So it's important not to mess with the indentation either. It's very important in Python, right? So our return statement up here on 25 for me is 3 indents over. This if statement is 2. This top if statement where we check the request method is 1 indentation over, and I am now 1 indentation over. I'm going to put my else statement here. So it's the other condition for if the request method is not a post method. So if it's anything else, this is what we want to do. And all we're going to do is we're going to give the user an empty instance of our task form. So we just instantiate task form, call it form, and give it to them. So this is the case where the method is most likely get, and it's just getting the URL, and it's just getting our, our basic page to look at, which we haven't made yet, our template that we have to make. But we're going to get to that because now it's going to be the same as what we've done in the past up here, where we did our context and then our render of some kind of template. So we're similarly going to have a context object like we did in the past. We context, and this is once again on the same level as the else statement. So we're outside of our if else logic. 1 indentation in, I'm going to define a context as a dictionary. So open and close curly brackets. I'm going to have a key value pair in there. That is a form as the key, as a string, and the value is our form from up here. And that's what's going to allow this to be sent out to our front end in some kind of template that we have to tell it which template to use. So again, one indentation in, we do our return statement. So we're still inside of our create task definition. We're one indentation in. We're going to use the render like we have in the past where we send our request. Some kind of template, which in this case is going to be to-do slash create dash task singular.html, which we haven't made yet, but we'll go make shortly. And then our context object, which has the form inside of it. Right, so now that we have our view written, what is the next step in our four-step process for writing CRUD operations? Anybody? Nobody? All right, write a view.
Delete.
Nope. Nope, not yet. We're going to map a URL. We have to map this URL. So we wrote a view. This is the Python part. Now we have to go map this piece to say, okay, cool. Now when a user goes to the URL that we tell it to, go find this template and do this, or go find this view and run this function that we just wrote. So we do that in urls.py. So our application level. So to do, just go, oh, whoa. Jumping the gun again. Got to save everything here. Then go to do, urls.py. Let's add quickly our new URL to this. All right, so we're going to do another URL following the same pattern of this one. So I'm just going to copy this and adjust it as we need. So copy the existing one for our view tasks and add it down here. And then I'm just going to update this URL to something else. We could call it anything we want to. We could call it task new. This is somewhat arbitrary. Just make sure you have a trailing slash on it. So this doesn't really matter what we call it. It's not going to break anything. Call it something different. The important part is to make sure that we have create here, and we don't misspell it, and we have task singular, because again, we wrote a function that creates only one task. You may write a view in the future that makes several tasks, but this one only does one. So we're going to have create equally the name is create dash task. Right, so our path should be some sort of URL that you give it. In our case, I'm going to say tasks new because it may leave space for us to do multiple new ones. We'll say tasks new for one, and then tasks, multiple for a future thing. And then we have our create single task. So views.create task. And it is named create dash task. All right. Now we have written our view. We've mapped our URL. What's the next step of 4? Where do we have to go from here? Because our view did some stuff with the database, and it ends with telling us to render a template, right?
Gotta go back to views.
Nope. No, let's go back to views. I kind of gave you the answer on that one. I was leading you there, leading the witness. We're making a template. So now we got to go do something with the template. We either make a template or we adjust a template that we have. So in this case, we are going to make a new template to handle our create thing. So this is going to be where we make the front end form. This is where we do, like I showed you when I highlighted the thing here in Python Anywhere. We're going to make that form. We're going to use some HTML, do some front end type stuff to link this to that. This is kind of that full stack piece of it where we have something for users to look at. May not be pretty, but it'll work. That's what we're going for is back end development. So in our, well, first of all, actually, let me ask, where should this template go? Should it go project level or should it go application level? Logically, based on the structure of our project.
Application though.
Yeah, application.
Application level, perfect. So we're going to go to my site to do templates. And we are going to make ourselves in the to-do. Remember, we have the redundantly named inner to-do. So we have templates, to-do templates to-do, right? that's where we are. We should be right next to our view tasks.html. So you should see that where you are before you start making files. Make sure you are in my site to do, templates to do, and you're next alongside your view tasks.html. And here we're going to make our create task.html.
I don't see a templates in my to do.
That's a problem. So you should definitely have this directory of my site to do, templates, and to do. So we made this directory last time, so you should have that. This is where, again, our view tasks is already here. So this isn't a new directory.
I don't see your view tasks either.
Uh-oh.
Oh wait, templates. I was looking for under files, not
That'll do it to you.
directory.
All right. All right, so here we go. So now we have our, in my site to do, templates to do, we've created our create-task.html, and we are going to create our template. There are a few things that need to go into this. It may kind of feel like a lot, but it's really not that hard. Yep.
Did you just create that create test file?
Yep, I did.
You just did it. Okay, I missed that. Okay, thank
Yep, sure, no problem.
you. Hey,
Oh, excuse me. So we create this file, and we have it blank, and we're ready to rock. We're going to do what we do at the beginning of any template creation in Django. We have to extend our base template so that we have continuity through our site. We do that with Django template tags. I'm going to open and close them right away so I don't forget. So that's curly bracket, percentage sign, then percentage sign, curly bracket. In between that, I'm going to write the word extends, and then the string for the name of what I want to extend. In my case, it's base.html. And now, if you recall, the way that we inject into that template some sort of content is we use the block tag, which is a reserved word, probably spelled correctly, inside of, again, our Django front-end tags. But we named our block content, which was an arbitrary name, but we set it already, so we have to make sure we reference it properly now. And then we'll do our end block tag. So Django template tag with the word end block, all one word, all lowercase inside of it. If you forget that piece, it'll be very upset with you. Now, in between our opening block content tag and our end block, anything that we write in here will be rendered on our page inside of our base page. So we'll have a navigation bar at the top and all that other stuff. So this is going to be our form page, right? So we're creating a task, so we're going to have a form that we need to have. First, let's throw a header on here just to let our users know what they're doing. We'll say new task or create new task or something like that, so they know where they are when they're looking at the page and they don't have to read the URL. So H3, again, that's just a heading. 3 is the level. 1 is the largest. It could go on down to 5 or something. I'm not really sure how deep it goes, but they get progressively smaller, and 3 works for us. Underneath that heading, I'm going to put a form tag, HTML form tag. When I close that up with the angle brackets, it'll write the closing tag automatically for me, and I'll get some space because we will put some stuff in there. But I also want to add some attributes to this. Now, last time I forgot to do this and it broke everything, so let's make sure we get all the attributes in here. The first one is going to be a class that is going to tell this what kind of thing it is. It's a post-form as a string. So that's the first class we want to add. And this is telling you that it's going to be a form that handles post information. And then we need to add this tag or this attribute called action, and then set it to an empty string so there's nothing in it. Now this is a way to be nice to people using really old browsers. So this is absolutely not required with new browsers at all. It doesn't do anything, and it hasn't for a really long time. But old browsers expect it, and if they don't get this thing, it'll break. So we just pass it a placeholder empty string in our forms to make sure that we're not breaking old browsers for people. That's what this action tag is doing. It's just kind of a nice thing for us to do for people. Then the last piece that's very, very crucial. If we forget this, it will not work, and I have absolutely forgotten this many times. We have to tell it explicitly what sort of method to expect. Do we remember what method we're using? Our request method?
Post.
Post. Like the road guards. Get out there. All right, post. All caps. Cool. So our form is set up with the attributes that it needs at a minimum. There's a lot more you can do with it, but this is what we need to get going. Now we can start writing some of the Django stuff in here again that will help us in a number of ways. First thing we need to do is a security feature that Django has that helps us out in blocking a particular kind of attack that I'll leave to you to look up the details of in some place. It's called a cross-site reference forgery attack. And so they have what's built in. We're going to put this Django tag here. So the open curly bracket, percentage sign. We'll close the tag. And in between, we can put CSRF, all lowercase, underscore token. CSRF says cross-site reference forgery. It can be used in all sorts of malicious behavior, and you want to include this token in your forms when you do a Django form. So it's one of the security things that you should be conscious of, even if you're not doing massive amounts of security in what you're doing. This is something that's really important to include. Now, below that, we just need to do a for loop that is going to loop through our form object that we sent up here in our context, grab each field out of that form, and display it on the screen with a spot to write something in and the name of that field, right? So just imagine a form like we've had any form on any HTML page where it has the thing that you're putting in and then like a big square rectangle thing to put in that information that expects you to write it in. So we're going to open up another Django front-end template tag with our curly bracket, percentage sign, closing curly bracket, close it off, and do a for loop. So for, and we'll use field, even though that's an arbitrary name, but just to be descriptive on what we're doing. So for field in form, which is not an arbitrary name. That's what we set in our view as the thing that we're sending to our context. And let's end this for now so we do not forget. So as another Django tag, we're going to open and close it with curly brackets, percentage signs, and then write end for, all lowercase. All right, so don't forget this. When we open up our for loop, we have to end it. All right, so from here, we're just going to add some basic HTML and then a couple of things that'll help us out in handling if somebody puts in some bad info or something like that. First thing we're going to put in is a division that we've used before. We're not going to do anything special with, but it'll help delineate the page a little bit and make it look nicer. Even if we don't add any classes to it or any stuff like that, it will have that space ready to go. And it's a good habit to kind of wrap your content in its own div when you can, which is pretty much all the time, so you should just do it all the time. And then we're going to do just a paragraph tag. So this is just text that's going to be on the page. We don't need anything more than that. But we will insert into this text some more Django stuff. So we'll do double curly brackets, open and closing. And if you recall, this is how we grab a specific thing out of our form object. So we say for field in form. These double curly brackets are a particular field, and we're going to do something with it. So we could do field dot label, and that's going to be the name of the thing. So, title, due date, whatever the case may be. It'll be that. And then we'll write outside of the curly brackets a colon, because this is just plain text now. So this is just what it's going to look like on the page. And I'm still inside my P tag. I'm going to add this break tag. This is a carriage return. It's like a space down line. So the top will say like title above it, and then underneath this break will give us a space down to put our actual field itself. And that's where the user is going to write something in. So this is how we do it. So this P tag right here is really the standard way for a Django form to be displayed on the page in HTML. Grab a field label with double curly brackets, do a field.label. It's up to you to put this break. This is just formatting in between. So in between the curly brackets is back to HTML. And then again, we're going to inject from our Django form the open field that accepts user input. All right, another piece we got to add to this.
I had a question about the break.
Sure.
Does it not add a break for the end? So when I put in the BR, it gave me an ending BR for the break also.
It gave you an end?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. No, it shouldn't. I don't think BRs have an ending tag, do they? No.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's odd. I don't. Maybe.
I took a HTML coding class a while back.
Yeah.
I made a lot of notes on the various tags or what have you.
Mhm.
And mine had my notes showed a break with an ending break.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought that much
Mine,
about it.
mine didn't come with an end tag.
Yeah, mine didn't either. Well, try it without. See if it behaves differently. I might actually be missing it and not even know. It might not even be required, and I could just be making this up and breaking my own HTML. Let's try it this way. If it doesn't come out right, then we'll add the ending tag. But it didn't come up automatically, which is interesting, and some people said it did. That's also interesting. All right, so from here, we're going to do another set of error handling things that are built into Django. That these forms have a way to detect errors, right? So if it's like, say, a date, it'll check to see that a date is actually in there. We do have a date. So we want to be able to give users back, like, hey, that's not a valid date, put a valid date in there. So we're going to do another for loop. So there's going to be internal to this for loop, right? So we're underneath, directly underneath our p tag. And remember, spacing doesn't matter. That's why we have to end all of our loops. So this indentation doesn't matter. I'm doing that for human readability. So we're going to open and close our Django tags, and we're going to do for, and then error in field dot errors. And this is, again, built into Django forms. Because, again, we're still inside of our form. We're still looping through our fields. And now it's going to say for any errors that particular field that we are on now has, we're going to do something with it. So let's close our for block before we move on. So end for in a Django template tag. So we have our for error in fields dot errors. Do something. And we're just going to return back to the screen in small text, the error itself. So we're going to do some inline style here and turn it red. We're going to say style is color red, as separated by a colon inside the string. And then inside of our small tag, we'll just do the error itself that we called right here. So for error in field errors, we're just going to print out that error in red. Right, we are almost there. Last things we need to do, let's take a second, think about this logically. We have our form on the screen now. So we have our fields, however many fields we have in our form, are now displayed on the screen, both as the label and the field itself. So spot to put stuff in. We've done some error handling. What else do we need to do now to make this a form? Think about forms that you've interacted with. What else do we need?
A way to submit them.
Yes, we need some buttons to submit these forms. So outside of our bottom for loop, right? So outside of the field and form stuff down here. So for me, it's line 14. I'm going to define a couple of buttons. So two buttons we need. We need a submit button. We're going to do a reset button, and then we're going to do a cancel button, which is going to take us back to our view tasks thing. So 3 things we need to add here. 2 of them are going to be built-in buttons. The last one, the redirecting us back to our view task thing, is just going to be an A tag that we've used already. So let's do that. So we're going to do HTML tag of button. So there's the tag button. Close it off itself. We're going to give this a type attribute and tell it that our type is submit. So it's going to be our submit button. So I'll put the text submit inside of it as well, so we know what we're doing. Then underneath that, I'll use another button, but this type will be reset. And we'll just put that in text as well for the user to know which button does what. We have submit and reset buttons. And then our cancel button will be our familiar A tag that we've done a bunch of times. So we'll do an A tag. We can make this a button. I don't think this is in the documentation, but we can, for consistency, make it a button thing like we have before. But we definitely need to put in an href to point back to our URL to view all of our tasks that are now in there, because now we have made our task. And this is, again, if we want to cancel and go back. So inside of a Django template tag, inside the string for the href, I'm going to open and close my Django template tag and do URL, and then our namespaced to do view dash tasks as a single quotation mark string, and then put the word cancel inside the A tag as the text. All right. So that's our form. We'll be able to use this again when we do our create. We don't have to write this again from scratch. It's kind of the nice thing. We'll just put some logic up at the top to use this depending on, the only difference is going to be this heading, basically, whether it's a new task or updating a task. The rest of the differences we can handle somewhere else. So we're going to be able to reuse this code again in our project. But for now, it's just creating a task, so we'll leave it at this. And this is our form. All right, so now what's the last thing that we need to do in our 4-step process? Whenever we do any CRUD operation, we have to write a view, we have to do a URL, we have to do something with a template, and then we have to what? We've made this new URL, so we've made this new template, we've made a view, we told the URL. What do we have to do to tie this into the rest of our project? We have to put into our project some way to get to this, right? So we now put in some link, some navigation to get into this form, to navigate from.
The URL?
Nope, not a URL. We've already mapped the URL. It's going to be as simple as just adding this, new task button to our view task list somewhere, right? So if we look at, here, let's open up our site and think about this logically real fast. Sorry, I'm all zoomed in, so nothing's lining up properly. Here we go. All right. So right now, with just our view written, our read operation written, we can just see this. So what we like to do is add on this screen somewhere a button to click to say we want to add a new task. That's the last piece we need to do. So we've built all the functionality to handle it, and we have a form template built. We just have to put on this screen someplace to go and do that now. Like there's no way for us to click and add a new button here. We just have to add that button. That make sense? So navigation from our starting point for, in our case, is our to-do task list. So it's just a big list of tasks here. We're going to add a add new task button like down here. That'll just pop up and say, okay, cool, add a button. All right, so to do that, we're not going to go to our base HTML. We're going to application levels because we're looking at our tasks list, right? So we need to go up into our to-do templates to-do, back into our view-tasks.html. And this is where we see our tasks, right? Now, underneath this whole set of logic, underneath our end if block, is where we can add this section where we're going to put our button and have another spot down there where the button is separate of this, right? Because we don't want, if we tie it into this logic, then we'll have to put it either redundantly in both cases to where when we do or don't have them, but we don't want to do that. There's a principle that we haven't hammered too hard. It's called don't repeat yourself, or dry, where you don't want to write things over and over again. So if you can write it once, it's a good idea instead of writing it a bunch of times. So we're going to write it once outside of our if conditional logic. We're going to add a div down here to give us some delineated space here. I'm going to get off the bottom of the page a little bit so everybody can see. So I'm going to add a div down here where we're going to put our button. We're going to call this div. We're going to give it an attribute of a class. And we're going to call it a row. So it's just like a row across the thing. We could put more buttons in there if we wanted to. In our case, we're just going to put one button in there. But inside of this row, we're going to put another div. We're going to give it the class of container. I'll close that off. Need that extra space. And then in here, we're just going to put our A tag. So we have a row set aside on the page. We have a container inside of that row. And inside of that container, we're going to put our A tag. And so we're going to say the class that we want this to be is button like we've done before. But then we're also going to use btn-primary, which is something that's in, something that's in our front end framework. There's a word. God, that word escaped me. Front end framework that we're using. That'll just make the button like a round blue button thing. Give us something a little more to look at. We need an href, like all of our A tags do, to point to some sort of URL. So we're going to put this in a string. Our Django template tags, like always. And what do we need to put in here? Somebody shout this out. What's the tag, first of all? Remember? You. That helping?
The URL. We're in
Yep.
the URL to go in there.
Yep. URL. And then we need to give it the namespaced URL. So to do is the app that we're using, colon, the view that we want to use. Create dash task, individual, singular. I'm going to close this tag. Whoop. And then inside, you got to put some kind of text. Don't forget to do that. I'm going to put add task because that's what we're doing. You could put create task. You put anything you want. That's arbitrary. But remember, put some kind of text in there or else users will not see anything. All right, I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to reload the server side because this should be the last change we had to make because, again, we followed that 4 steps. We wrote our view. We mapped our URL. We created a template this time. We didn't have to make any adjustments to a template. And then we added our navigation to the new function that we just built. All right, so if we did all that properly, when I come back here and refresh on my browser, I should see that add task button pop up. And then if I click on it, it should take me to this form where I have my title, and then I have a spot to put in it, due date, spot to put in it, my status with a drop down. I have submit. I have my cancel button. Let's go back to that. And it's hidden because I made it a button instead of making it something like that. So we may want to change the format of that to make it visible, maybe make it a primary button too. But there it is, and it works. It took me back. Let's see if our thing works for reset. I'll put in some information. I'll hit reset. It clears it out. So that works. And let's see if it'll take a new task. And to due date, hit submit. And there's the task that we just made with our due date. Was everybody able to get to that point?
No,
No.
No.
no, it's completely broken.
Okay. Okay. Completely broken. That's good. Where do we think we're broken? You want me to hop in and have a look at yours, Anthony?
Oh yeah, it says something went wrong. That's all I got.
Okay. Okay. So where should you go from that when you give something went wrong? I'll go there too, but where should you go to start figuring that out?
They don't really give you much pointers. It says please try later. That's what it says.
That's not helpful. All right, so dig into your logs in here in the web tab. That should give you
Logs.
something more important. So I can see right here, this right here is definitely a typo. See how there's no space between from. Oh, no, that's right.
Oh.
Dot forms. No, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. That's right. Where else? Let's scroll up and see what else we got. Cannot import task form from to do dot forms. Interesting. Okay, so it looks like there might be something wrong with the task form itself because of this import. Sorry, this import actually does look like it's good. Let's go have a look. Okay, so you saw how it got here, right, Anthony?
Yeah, well, not really.
Okay, so on the web tab, if you scroll down to log
Web.
files,
Web tab.
yeah, if you go to web in Python anywhere, right? So it says dashboard console files web, click on web. And then,
Hold on. Let me see. Oh, I'm on dashboard. Yeah.
okay,
You said web.
yep, web.
Oh, that's
And
the
then-
open web tab. Okay.
Yep. And then if you scroll down on that web tab,
Okay.
you should see something that
Log.
says log files. Then the middle one out of the 3 says, your username, then pythonanywhere.com.error log. And that's going to be your
error.
most useful log.
Okay.
So that looked like it was telling us there was something wrong with your forms. Let's have a look. On my site, to do, you got forms.py. Well, so there's the problem. you have no form class written in the forms.py.
Hmm.
So that's why it can't import that, because there's nothing to import.
Where would I must have put it somewhere else then.
So, yeah, it looks like these things are all well written, but you didn't define this task form. If you want, I can just paste it in there for you, man, to make it quicker. But that's
Oh wait, I'm on form. I have stuff here in forms.py
do you?
under my site to do forms.py.
Did you not save it?
It says unsaved though.
There you go. Got to hit that save button, man. Okay.
Save.
Yep.
All right, now it says let me hit. Let me circle it.
Yep. Reload that
All
browser.
right. Let me try to. Maybe try it again now. All right. Okay, it's not broken anymore, but still, I still don't have any functionality with. Yeah, you see what you're doing there? Yeah, that's all. That's nothing.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and the other one too, the about, it doesn't work anymore either.
Okay. So about looks like it works.
No, it's supposed to pop up and ask, right?
Oh, is it?
Doesn't
Oh,
pop up
well, we
anymore.
should have taken that off, so it doesn't have to do that anymore. But let's go look, see why it's not getting
Oh,
that part.
okay.
Because that's probably, if it's not popping up, that means, I'm guessing. Well, let's just start at the top.
Why don't we move that code?
Okay, so let's go to top level templates and just have a look to see if there's a problem in maybe the reference here.
In base.
Yeah, so in base.html.
Okay.
Okay, that looks good. Doesn't look like there's anything wrong with that. And you click on this, it goes here. So we got to do, right? So it's going here. It's just not loading anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's step back through your view all the way down to do. We'll start at the beginning, right? So we write a view, right? So we got view tasks, task objects, all values. That looks good. Context tasks. Yep. So that looks good. To do view tasks HTML. Then we'll step up into URLs, see if maybe there's a problem there. Shouldn't be.
Which URL to do? Okay.
Yep. No, that looks good. And again, it's hitting your endpoint, but it's not loading anything out of that template. So what does that tell us? Let's go have a look at your templates.
Not reading the data.
To view tasks. No, well, extended our base. You have your end block. You have your content block. Interesting. Why are you getting nothing? Huh. Wow. All right, man. I'm gonna say I might have to loop back to this one and think about it, why we're getting nothing on this. Because you have your task. You have this view tasks. Hold on, let's look at view tasks is called the right thing. In your URLs. View tasks. It's called the right thing there. View dash tasks. Huh. Man. All right. So there's something in here that I'm also missing looking at your stuff. Now I'm gonna have to take another second to figure out why you're not getting anything to come up. It looks like it's routed mostly right. And you have something in your templates and they're in the right place. So I'm gonna have to kind of take a mulligan on that one, maybe see if anybody else is stuck and come back to you. I'm gonna think about that for a minute, Anthony. Anybody else stuck that might be able
Yep.
to? Yeah,
I'm stuck.
All right,
Well,
where are you stuck?
There were a couple places where you just went a little too fast, and I couldn't keep up.
Oh, okay. Well, shout those out, man. We can slow down, but let's have a look at where you might be stuck.
Well, usually by the time I think to unmute myself, you're already past.
Oh,
so
yeah. All right. Well, don't let me run that fast, man. That's like, this is supposed to be fast, but if you're falling out, get in the truck, dude. There's no harm in that. All right, so let's see what's going on with you though.
Well, I have a syntax error on my views.py and to do
Okay.
to
Do you?
start.
Syntax error on your views.py. All right. I was gonna say your site looks like it's working, but you just haven't updated things, huh?
Probably not,
Okay.
because like I said, I just fell too far behind.
All right. Okay. Cool. So, looking at this, where do you think this syntax error could be coming from? Like, what do you think the syntax error is telling you?
I don't know.
What's important in Python syntax? I mentioned a few times.
Like it's not got the right language or something.
It's
But it has.
indentation. Indentation. This is indented too far. You have one too many indentations.
Oh.
So this return statement is too deep. So you just back it up one and save it. See if that does it.
Yep.
Gets rid of your. Here, let me get out of this because it's just telling me I have two things open at once. All right, so that solved that error. Cool.
And then there were a couple places where I couldn't finish typing what you were doing before
Okay.
you had moved on.
All right.
And I don't even remember where they were.
All right. Well, let's check your URLs, man. So you wrote the view, right? That looked decent. You got your URL in here. So we got that. Yeah. You got your create task. You named it create task. So that's good. Where should I go next?
View tasks.
Go to our template. We checked our views. We checked our URLs. So let's check your templates to do. Yep, you made your template. Okay. So here's a problem that I see. You didn't close this. See this on your line 3?
Yeah,
You
I
didn't
see that.
block content.
I got a question. How come the editor didn't flag that?
See an extra R in error.
That is a good question. Actually, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't catch that.
I mean, that was a flaggable offense, right?
You would think, yeah, that's definitely a syntax error. And when you saved it, JT, you didn't get a flag on yours, right? That said there was a syntax error there.
I don't know that I saved this one yet.
It says I'm saving in the upper right corner, so
that might
maybe
be.
He never
That might be
saved it.
me that
Oh.
that did it unsaved. Let me get out of there so I'm not making any conflicts, and I'll go back and have a look. Okay, so it's there now, but it wasn't showing you an error, and it didn't show me an error when I opened it up. Yeah, so that's a good call. I actually hadn't noticed that it didn't show that. That should be, that is a syntax error. That's true. So maybe this doesn't catch it, so that's something to call out. I wouldn't be surprised if the Python Anywhere thing that it has in here, even though it does use Django and it lets you to do it, this text editor doesn't have Django's syntax built into it to check for that. Right? So it'll have HTML. It can catch HTML problems. It can catch Python syntax problems, but it can't catch Django. So
I remember now. At the very bottom, when we were doing href equals something URL, and you moved before I could even finish figuring out what that was.
Yeah, so this is just a reference back to our view tasks thing. So we've created this is a cancel button. So this is moving us back. This was when we decided we don't want to make a new thing. So we're going to cancel it. So we're going to do, you just have to put in a string here, the to do : view tasks, view dash tasks, like we had in. Yeah, here, I can go back and show you mine so you have something to look at here. Sorry. Let's do this. Do templates. Do create task. Here we go, like this. So the string right here is what you need to add.
Okay.
Then cancel button should work. then anybody else have a question? Then Anthony, I will dig in to figure out what's going on here. So that's, nothing jumped out at me right away, but I want to see if anybody else might be stuck on something that we can fix here quickly. Is everyone else able to get to that point of creating a task? Ariel, Nathan, Greg, anybody able to get there? Or?
I'm doing some troubleshooting.
I
I
still
missed the
got something
first,
went
like,
wrong.
Oh, okay.
So I probably missed something somewhere else too.
Right. And Ariel, you said you missed.
I missed like the first 10 minutes of class, so
Oh
I
man.
have to
Okay.
go back and do that little bit of code that I missed
Okay.
because
Okay.
my website won't load now because all the new stuff we put in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Well, all right. So we're at time. Anybody that wants to hang out and get a debug, we could definitely crank on that. We can leave it as homework to get to the point because again, the documentation has every piece that you need. So if you get totally stuck, if you've got the files, again, you could check that they're in the right place and you can just copy and paste all that stuff. If you've been following naming conventions up to now and you've been following what we have, again, calling everything my site and stuff like that, then you should be able to just copy and paste those things to catch up. But anybody that wants to hang out and try to debug now, we absolutely can. But I'm gonna stop the recording here. If everyone's cool with that, and unless anybody had any other quick questions or something before we wrap up or dive into debug. No? Okay. I'm gonna stop it. Catch everybody on Thursday that's gonna leave. Anybody that wants to stay, absolutely welcome to.